Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of Animators React. We are joined by Ted T here from DNEG Animation. You are the global head of animation, and we're gonna be looking at a whole bunch of stuff that you've done over the last, how many years?
A long time.
A long time years.
31.
Wow.
You've survived the transition from traditional to 3D, and you had to make the jump yourself.
Yeah, so I worked at Disney in traditional animation doing hand-drawn, and then I switched over to do CG animation at DreamWorks.
The man has worked from Lion King to Lilo and Stitch, all the way to Nimona and a couple other modern pieces.
I've been very lucky and fortunate to have like a really fun career where I've learned a lot, and I've worked with a lot of great people and who are generous with me and taught me a lot too.
Well, you've worked on a lot of amazing pieces, and Ted has a lot of amazing stories, so let's jump into it.
How can I go back? I'm not who I used to be.
Wow, look at that. Ghost Mufasa, a brilliant animator named Tony Fucelli animated Mufasa, and Ruben Kino animated adult Simba. And the lip sync that is on Mufasa, Tony kind of pioneered it. It was just the timing, and if any animation nerd wants to like still frame when he's saying like Simba.
Simba's down there. Simba.
It was just the pace of how he dropped the jaw, hit the bottom and came back up, you know, off of a consonant into a vowel. And the way it was so fluid and fleshy, and it hadn't really been done, believe it or not. And everyone started trying to do the same pattern on all their animation. The director's like, just animate normally. You can't make everyone talk like Mufasa. You're like, okay. Yeah. You know, 2D back in the day was a mixture of like ancient secrets that people thought that they had, you know, and now in the CG era, everyone's very sharing, but back then you kind of had to figure it out on your own as you went along. No one sat down, and a lot of people think that it wasn't technical, but it was actually 2D was very, very technical in terms of how you could approach it to be efficient and to be quick as well. But there's a lot of lost secrets at this level of animation that there's no one really to pass things along.
Dang, yeah.
The challenge of 2D animation was also the joy in it, in the fact that you have like a blank piece of paper and you really had to learn to draw. Like that was your language, you know? Like now, people who are adept with Maya and with CG specific tools are able to communicate better. And back then it was a question of your draftsmanship. And if you drew well, it just helped you more. But now I find the beauty in CG is that when you're really willing to share with others and support them, everyone gets better, you learn more, performances are improving, and now that, you know, you've got films like, you know, Spider-Verse and TMNT, but I like that people are really trying new things and going back to old timing. Like everyone's like, oh, Spidey's on 2s and 4s. Well, this was too way back in the day, and I'm glad we're bringing that in.
All right, we're gonna take a break from the Circle of Life to talk about the Square of Life. That's right, Squarespace.com, the sponsor of today's video. Now, if you are in the market for a website, well, you've probably heard it before, but Squarespace.com is a great place to start. They have this cool thing called the Fluid Engine, where you can build a template, one of their award-winning templates, and you can mix and match things, drag them around. It's really intuitive and easy. Plus, if you're running merch, you can fulfill orders and run all that through an automated Squarespace store. You can do point of sale stuff, you can run online stores, you can have member areas. You know, there's a whole bunch of options when it comes to Squarespace website layouts. Now, if you didn't know it already, Corridor's first website was actually made for the square aspect ratio. We looked at on square monitors. So, you know, we go real far back with that shape. So if you are looking to build a website, well, you can start a free trial on squarespace.com. And if you want 10% off a website purchase or a domain purchase, well, squarespace.com/Corridor Crew will get you that. All you website folks, check it out. All you people that don't need a website, don't worry about it. Back to the video.
The name's Nimona. Your sidekick has arrived.
I don't need a sidekick.
Every villain needs a sidekick.
Yeah, so Nimona is a very fascinating movie, and can you tell us a little bit about like where this movie came from, how it came to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of legendary now how they had started it at Blue Sky, and then unfortunately, you know, Disney ended up closing the studio and ended up coming to us at DNEG very thankfully. And they didn't really get a big jump on it, you know, in animation. They had a couple of sequences done, and unfortunately, it was just beautiful work, but we couldn't use it because of the technicalities, so we just started over.
The Queen Killer is still out there.
Everyone is scared.
Where did the aesthetic for this movie kind of come from? Because this is a CG 3D movie,
Yeah.
but it looks 2D in its art style.
Yeah.
So like, how do you make that work?
Yeah, well, obviously, you know, the art director, Aidan Sugano, had a huge influence, and Archie Donato, who is head of lighting, one of the VFX soups, you know, they wanted to maintain it by not going to like the typical realistic kind of sense of occlusion. You know, it's cool because you still have a lot of bloom and reflectivity in the armor, for instance, and it's kind of very shiny, but it's also has a flat look, like you said, because of like handling the ambient occlusion in kind of a non-realistic way to keep it very graphic. And it just helps everything integrate, the backgrounds integrate, the characters integrate, they don't pop off, and yet their silhouettes are very clear. Everything's about clarity, storytelling and emotional clarity.
They were like this when I got here.
I like how our eyes are blinking red too.
Yeah, it's really great. You know, the fun part about it is that we're not supposed to know what to think of her. We wanted her to be like inspired by the explosiveness of Beetlejuice and kind of like Bugs Bunny at the same time, who's always under control but not. And so that was really her thing. She's unpredictable in her because you don't know what she stands for. You don't know what she's about.
She stands for chaos.
Well, and she actually does, and she's not pretending to be chaotic. She really is that way.
Oh, look, it's Glory!
Where?
I'm definitely feeling that Bugs Bunny vibe from her.
Yeah. Also, too, a lot of animators' personalities came out. Pat Puhala did these, and he's just wanted to put that punk side of her in really clearly. One interesting thing in this movie is that, like you'll see here, we use eye trace very heavily.
Eye trace. Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean?
Sure. So if you look at a lot of the shots, the main character that you're watching at the end of one shot will be roughly in the same place in the next shot where a character is staged.
Okay.
So your eye doesn't need to jump around, and your eyes can follow easily where you need. And here you could see that Belle's quite still, and you have Nimona moving a lot. And then she looks over at him, and he starts to talk a bit. And she was in the same place at the end of that last shot as the beginning of the next one.
It's kind of like when they shot Fury Road, how they framed a lot of the action center.
Exactly.
So that you never have to actually search for the action.
Yep. And also, too, there's a lot more profile in our film. Like, this is 3/4, but there's a lot of profile in our film because, one, I think the character designs are really, really strong. But secondly, the directors weren't afraid to have them face each other.
And Big Fat Unicorn!
Fat unicorn.
Yeah, you saw it.
I like how it pushes his hair.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The thing about profile that works great is that the contact is so direct. You have two characters 3/4, you're kind of cheating it, right?
Sure,
because
yeah,
technically if I was 3/4 and you're 3/4, it's like we're not really looking at each other unless you're looking at, you know? But profile works so well. And normally in feature animation, it's a taboo thing. You're like, turn them 3/4, turn them 3/4.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Why is that the case?
It's the case because usually in 3/4, the designs look much more appealing. You see the far eye, the design is a lot clearer, but because we wanted to keep it very graphic, you know, Nate Stevenson's graphic novel, it's a webcomic and it's very, very stylized. So it helped our characters stay very, very graphic and clear.
I promise, I will not freak!
So like Nimona, she's a shapeshifter. She's able to transform into all these different creatures.
Yeah.
Like from a character animation standpoint, is that just like a field day? Like, all right, now she's gonna be a hippo. Now she's gonna be a dragon or a shark that walks.
And then so it becomes about making the behaviors consistent across all forms, you know, using the eyes and eyebrows as a link to them, but also using like head spacing to make all the characters feel the same. But what's really fun is also putting animal traits of that, like of a wolf or a bear or a horse into that to make it also feel animal-like. But in terms of like the literal transformations, they're very simple. Now, a lot of it's like sleight of hand. So a lot of our riggers, our rigging team just like came through big time. Is that hilarious? And really, it's just shapes transforming into one another. We use a lot of squash and stretch to hide transitions. They're really, really quick within a couple of frames. And then really the things to spend as little time in the middle as possible and to finish in a nice slow in the final form that she transforms into. So effects could follow up with either that sparkly effect or ribbon effect to make it really easy to track. I love this film. Everyone who worked on this film, so emotional about it. Like even for me, just a lot of hard work went in, and anyone who's ever been associated with the film, the Blue Sky crew, our crew at DNEG Animation, we just put every ounce of effort and care into sharing the message and trying to make it as beautiful as we could.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch this movie with my wife.
Cool.
Like,
I'm
it has
glad.
to happen. Oh, by the way, I'm just gonna throw it out there. Just saying, if you enjoy this content, hit that subscribe button. You won't miss out on future ones, and it helps us. We all win. All right, just saying.
Hello? Are there any animals in here? How?
Dude, I remember loving Lilo and Stitch. That was such a good movie.
Were you like 5?
I was older than 5.
He watched it for the first time last year.
I was 30.
Read the charges.
Dr. Jumba Jukiba.
Captain Gantu was my character. It was the first time that I was assigned my own character in a Disney movie, which was really exciting and a real point of pride for me. And this was a great shot because he's, 25, 30 feet tall. He wouldn't move around a lot like a normal human, so you'd have to find a pose that reads.
He's like part shark, part elephant.
Yeah, that's exactly right. He was meant to be elephant, killer whale, a ram, and Iron Man.
An Iron Man.
Yeah.
Now I noticed that there's some use of 3D models here. Like those guns are cell shaded
It's
3D
digital.
models.
Yep.
I remember reading that the use of 3D models was oftentimes inspired by having to draw a rigid shape orbiting in 3D space.
Yeah. We often ask each other, like, why does it need to be animated? In this case, clearly anything that's mechanical, as those guns were, is a clear choice to do in CG. You have to remember when this was made, that was a big deal to do those guns, right?
Right.
Our CG department was dying to do something like that.
please.
Yeah, exactly. Because this film really stood for a great combination of CG as well as traditional techniques like watercolor. All these backgrounds are watercolor.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's like every single
really
background
beautiful.
you see is just like a watercolor
Everyone
painting.
is a literal watercolor painting.
That's incredible.
This whole sequence here, you want to know a story here?
Yes.
So basically, we'd done a sequence where Stitch hijacks a 747 instead of this red spaceship. And he flies through Honolulu, and he flies along the side of a building, and all the glass breaks. It was done, and then 9/11 happened.
Oh.
Yeah, and you guys had to
This did
change it.
come
We
out
had
in
to do it over.
2002.
Yeah, we had to do
Yeah.
it over. But miraculously, we turned that sequence around and ended up on budget. We actually were below budget on this film.
Dude.
When's the last time you heard that?
I haven't. It's like a mystical thing to hear.
Yeah, I love this film. Again, it's very easy to look at. And again, just mastery and direction. I think directors sometimes weirdly get forgotten in like the craft of it, but Chris and Dean are great, and equally Nick and Troy were fantastic as well.
Also, I don't know who did that chocolate chip mint ice cream, but I felt like I could taste it.
Yeah.
I was like, I
Now
know
I want
exactly
some.
what that cartoon tastes like. So obviously you're now doing all of this 3D animation, but you got your start in 2D animation. At some point you had to transition over into using computers.
Yeah.
Like, what was that like? What project was it?
It was Shark Tale.
Shark Tale!
Shark Tale.
Shark Tale's
Will
the one.
Smith.
Let's take a look.
Carrying a big old envelope full of money. Gonna give it to Mr. Sykes. Come on, hurry up, hurry up!
The human teeth is an interesting touch on a fish.
Interesting is a great word.
Kind of like that other movie you did, Sonic.
Meow.
Yeah, I loved working on Sonic.
Well, I guess that makes me Oscar the millionaire. The millionaire. The millionaire.
I did that shot. That was like my second shot. The Angelina Jolie fish. What's that? There you go. But you can't see that the bottom, like all the joints of the hair on the bottom are like. I just made the wave work as well as possible. The curve type they used on this film was B-spline, and it has a lot of natural overshoots, right? That you use a Euler filter to flatten out normally, but I didn't know the difference. But because they're underwater, that overshoot worked super well because it made him look like he floated and came back down through no skill of my own. And then so I'm like, this is great. But I remember thinking to myself, if I had to do a walk, if they weren't underwater, I might not have continued at DreamWorks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they probably would have let me go because I couldn't do a walk.
So do you think there's a decision to make it a fish movie because you didn't have to deal with that kind of stuff?
No, but I'm really thankful that it was.
When you
focus on Kung Fu, you suck.
We actually haven't talked about Kung Fu Panda yet on the show,
No.
surprisingly.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, this is our first time. Tell me about what you worked on.
Kung Fu Panda was very interesting because, first of all, any film about martial arts, growing up, big martial artist, and I did it for a long time, and a big
really?
fan of anything martial arts.
I have come home, Master.
I really had fun with these shots. Ian McShane's voice here, he's kind of taunting Shufu. This was probably the most fun shot because the voice performance was so good and he's being sarcastic and he laughs there. They just felt like very truthful performances. That's always where I felt like I can jump into the skin of the character a little bit better. So these were some other great animator shots. And then in this sequence here, this was Jay Reisig's really cool shot here with the reflection.
Yeah. Do you animate the speed ramps? As in, like, do you animate
Yes,
things fast
this
and then
was.
animate them slow? You don't just slow it down later?
Yeah, all the speed ramps were just done by hand. And this sequence too, when he grabs the staff, this was great because I got to do this section and where he starts to choke Shifu here and the staff starts to tremble.
Yeah.
Until it snaps. And you know, all that is really, it just happened to be that that staff was rigged perfectly. Like, because when it's bending, it's gonna bend in a different place once pressure is applied. It bent in the right places and it had a pivot that I could slide up and down the staff. And so just because of that, it was really the staff that made that shot look good because it worked perfectly. And I just trembled it. It's like, I used a lot of like old 2D tricks in terms of staggers and stuff. And everyone's like, what are you doing?
What's a stagger?
And a stagger is just a series of frames that are the same frame, but you just do them out of order. But it's the same frame. So you have like 1, 3, 2, 2, 3, 1, and you just keep changing it up. And
So
it makes it
going like,
yeah, so it looks like a tremble, but it's really a lot easier than it looks. And then later on, there's a part where he's chasing Po up a building, and Po kicks these roof tiles into Tai Lung's face. And I remember just really doing a stagger.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
it's just a stagger. It's just like here, back, here, back. And I remember there was an animator who was much more experienced at CG than myself, and he's like, what are you doing? And I go, oh, I'm just doing a stagger on the head because once there's effects and those tiles are hitting him in the face, I want it to feel really abrupt and sharp, like if a tile hit you in the face. And if you make it too refined and too fancy, you'll miss the kind of brutality of like, just like bam, 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 being hit repeatedly.
How to respond?
He didn't believe me. And then so finally, when it finally was done in lighting and comp, I think it ended up working. You know, and he came back and he says, I didn't think it would work, but it looks cool. So I was glad.
You told so many different stories. We talked about so many different movies. We can't possibly fit all of this on YouTube. So there's an extended version of this episode on our website, corridordigital.com right now. You can check it out with the free trial. Thank you so much for watching. This was a really fun one to do. Ted, thank you so much for joining us. That was a lot of fun. I love hearing all your crazy stories about going through all the different animation films and your transition from 2D to 3D. That was special, so thanks for sharing all that.
Thanks, it was super fun. Thanks for having me. Like, I get to see the studio and talk about animation, amazing things. Yeah, it was really fun. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah,
Absolutely. One thing for you to do, you gotta go watch Nimona. Check it out, it's on Netflix right now. You all have your uncle's Netflix, it's fine.
Right now.
Yeah, you're all still sharing passwords, right? That's fine.